Welcome back in, everybody. Golf Talk Radio with Mike and Billy. Brought to you by Sundale Country Club, home of the Bakersfield City Championship for the past 30 years. Call Bakersfield or Sundale Country Club at 661-831-5224. It's sundalecountryclub.com. Very soon here we should have A.J. Bonar calling. In fact, I think he's coming on right now. Hello, A.J. Are you there? It's Mike from Golf Talk Radio.
I am here, Mike. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Got a beautiful day here in sunny Southern California.
Yeah. How warm is it down your way?
Well, it's going to be 95-ish.
Wow, you got it. You got it nice down there. We hit 106 up here yesterday.
Oh,
so,
my Lord.
Yeah, and it's steamy. It's steamy.
Oh,
but,
I think so. I would think so. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, but hey, it's great having you on the show. We had you on the show a while back. I was listening to some past interviews we'd done with you. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago, so it's great we connected again on social media, so it was nice having you back on. I have in the studio with me Dave Schmandl from Slick Sticks. He's done club fittings, professional club fittings, played some professional golf, so he's here. And I also have a friend of yours. I think you'll remember him. I have Jim DeLobby, PGA professional.
Yep.
And
Hi, AJ.
And Jim's sitting
Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
I'm loving listening to you, that's for sure. It's been a long time. You're looking good. I watched one of your latest YouTubes. You're just awesome, dude. Really enjoyed my time with you. Professional Golfers Career College in Zevo, right?
What's that?
Professional Golfers Career College in Zevo, right?
Yeah, Zevo was a start of a lot of good things, wasn't it, in club fitting?
That was because of you, really.
Oh, well, that's awful kind. I appreciate it. But it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing to get that information out there.
Yeah, so, AJ, there are quite a few people probably that don't know you. I mean, that's kind of what I think we've all found out now that we have this social media world. You kind of go, oh, there are a lot of people that don't know who I am or what I do. And so for our listeners, can you give us just a brief background on you and where you're at right now?
Absolutely. This is my 51st year teaching golf professionally. I started in 1968 and as an assistant pro at Belmont Country Club in Perrysburg, Ohio, and Cliff Cook was the head professional that hired me. And the very next year, he won the Ohio Open by 9 shots. So this was a guy that could play, and he worked well at the club as well. But I grew up in a steel mill town where we had a 9-hole municipal course, and I just loved playing golf because my older brother played, and I wanted to do what he did. And I just couldn't get crazy enough about the game. I played every sport I could play, and I was pretty decent at them. I was an all-star in Little League and that kind of thing. I played football in high school. Even though I was the smallest kid in my class, I played up through my sophomore year in high school and even scored a touchdown, only weighing less than 100 pounds.
Wow.
So my sophomore year, I wrestled a 103-pound class, and my senior year, I wrestled 118. So I was never a big guy. But I played everything, and golf was the perfect sport because I didn't have to worry about any big guy hitting me, and I could beat him if I could play better. And I did everything I could that everybody told me about the golf swing, and it was such a hard game for me to learn where all the other games were easy. I picked them up, played them, did well, ping pong, tennis, did everything we could, badminton, and golf just seemed like this huge mystery. And then I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to play golf at Kent State for 4 years, and it was a very interesting time because what happened my freshman year, I was playing with a fellow freshman of mine, and we finished we played 17, and we were going to 18T, and I just closed him out to win $1 from him, I think. And he was really ticked off, and he walked up to the tee marker that was on the tee at 18, took his driver out and was going to break the tee marker. And the tee marker was a 4-inch cube of wood, 4-inch square cube of wood. And the flat side was on the ground, so the flat side was on the back as well. So he took his driver out and was going to hit it, but he didn't. And I looked at it and I thought, well, if I had to hit that wooden cube with my driver, I would never have to make a cube hitting swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never. I wouldn't ask somebody, well, how much shoulder turn do I need to break this cube? I'd just hit it as hard as I could, flat flush against it, and I would never hit it with a closed face or an open face. I'd flush it every time. I grew up using tools. My father was a tool maker, and he was a machinist. And he said that, I remember when I was 5 or 6 years old, he said, "Now, son, I want to tell you this. You don't pound nails with a screwdriver."
Yeah,
and as simple and stupid as that sounds, that was the best way to ever say every tool is designed to give you a mechanical advantage of some kind. Use it to do that. Don't use it to do something else. So it was the way I learned to use tools of all kind, and it turns out that the bag of clubs that we have to play golf with is a bag of tools. And what I found out was that using the tool the way it's designed to be used is the biggest problem people have when they learn to play golf. And that sent me on a tour or a trip at that time in my brain to figure out how did I hit the wooden thing without having to think about a golf swing. So I went back to my dorm room and I used my laundry bag, which was always full of dirty clothes anyway, and I started pounding on that with my 2-iron that I had back at the dorm. And that became the first impact bag. And I started beating on that thing and beating on that thing and beating on that thing. And that year, believe it or not, I had, I think, 4 scores of 65. And I'm actually one of those. I missed a 1-foot putt on the last hole to shoot 64. And I lifted out and was all ticked off when I came into the clubhouse. "Oh, what'd you shoot?" 65. Sucked me too good. "Oh, what are you all?
Cry,
baby. Well, I
baby.
missed 1-4 I missed a 1-foot putt last hole for a new low, and I missed it. Oh, poor baby. Of course, nobody cares.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
my point was that this had shown me how to use a golf club. And so I used it. Now, what I didn't know back in those days was the detail of impact with the club and the ball. And a couple of things that we know about science and physics. And I was, one of my minors was physics and biology and physics, because they work pretty well together in golf.
And so would you say, just for a second, since you have that experience in physics and whatnot, would you just say that maybe what you stumbled on is the way to communicate to someone without going into detail how they should be striking the ball?
Well, no. What it does is it communicates how to strike the ball yourself,
right,
into your hands. That you take the responsibility instead of doing what I call executive golf, which is where the executive says, "Well, I don't do the dirty work. You see, I delegate that to someone below me, and they do it. And if they screw it up, I blame them, not me." even though ultimately it's my responsibility. So what you do in golf is you say, "Well, I don't do the dirty work down there at Impacts. What I do is I delegate that to my golf swing, and if it screws up, I blame my swing, not me." So you see how that works. It's we have, in fact, when you use a tool, you had to pound a big nail into the side of the base on a baseboard next to the floor, and you had a long-handled hammer to drive it with. You wouldn't think about anything except putting the hammer on the nail. You wouldn't think about what your shoulder did. You wouldn't think what your right knee did. You would take those 2 hands and put them on the hammer handle, and you would apply that to the nail at a speed that you could accurately do it. And then as you got better at it, you'd hit it harder and harder and harder. And if you watch a guy frame a house, the framers are astounding with a hammer and a framing hammer and a 16-penny nail. They tap that thing once and boom, hit it one time and it's in solid. You go, holy moly, how did you do that? So that's what happens when you do something with those hands of ours. And that's the other thing that I found in terms of the biology is, we always hear in golf, keep your hands out of it, they're unreliable. Use the big muscles. Well, here's an interesting fact. The biology of it is that for little boys, when we're born, the first 6 years of our life is our gross motor development period. That's the big muscles for running and jumping and climbing and doing all the big things we do. And at the age of 6, those motor programs that we have now own are put on a ROM chip, read-only memory. You can't write over it. If you're not Michael Jordan in running and jumping by the time you're 6, you ain't never going to be him. So, in your neighborhood, somebody was always the fastest guy on the block, right?
Right.
And he didn't all of a sudden go down to 4th place and then back up to 1st place the next week, did he? He was always first.
No, unfortunately, every year that was Tom Smith, and it wasn't me.
Steve Andrade.
There you go.
He was always the first that went in basketball games and football picks and all that stuff.
Yep, of course, and that's the gross motor stuff that's on the ROM chip, and you can't write over it.
Yeah.
Read-only memory means you don't write over it; you live with it. And the reason it's done that way is because after the age of 6, the fine motor system, the majority of which lives from your elbow to your fingertips. That's your 2 hands and forearms. That's the biggest majority of your fine motor system. That part of your body is random access memory the rest of your life. It can learn new things and write new programs every day until you're gone. And so those 2 things are teachable. Your right hand and left hand. And your right hand has pretty much about almost 40% of your brain's allocated to your hands. That's an enormous amount of brain, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And that's how smart your hands are. And you know the joints in the body, all your joints have this one thing. Every joint in the body has what's called proprioceptors. Now, proprio is a Greek root word for self. So it's a self-perception item. It tells you where your joint is in space anytime. And so proprioceptors are little buttons that wrap around your elbow and all your joints. And the one pressure that we have every day is gravity. It's vertical. So we always know we're oriented to know where we are in space with those proprioceptors because they send little messages to the brain. And the proprioceptor measures force directionally. That's what it does. Well, in a joint the size of your elbow, there's one joint. In a joint the size of your elbow, if you make a fist with your right hand, that's almost the size of your elbow. It's got 14 different joints. The data in there is enormous coming back to your brain in terms of 3-dimensional space to know where it is. They're not unreliable. The right hand, if you're right hand dominant, the right hand has more brain attached to it than the left hand. So now you have 28 different joints receiving spatial data in your hands. And these things are the most amazing piece of equipment that have ever been on this earth. And so we tell everybody in golf, well, use the big muscles and leave your hands out of it. Well, I'm sorry. If you did that when you were teaching somebody how to use a tool, you wouldn't be very successful as a teacher of tool use. You have to teach someone how the tool is supposed to be used, and then they begin to use the tool that way and teach themselves how to use the tool. And that's where my teaching is in golf. I teach all my students how the tool is supposed to be used against the back of the ball. And to that end, we have some other things that come out of this. I hope, I tend to go on about this. Please, when you want to interrupt, please do. Okay?
Well, let me ask you again. Joining us here, AJ Bonar, golf instructor, real prominent golf instructor. AJ, I think it's ajgolf.com. Is that right, AJ?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
ajgolf.com. And I wanted to ask you because you mentioned hands. So in the golf swing, do you think or do you believe that the hands should work with each other, or we'll hear, the golfer hears, the amateur golfer hears, and even the pros, use your dominant side, use your dominant hand. So, like, I'm right-hand dominant. Should I be fighting that? Like, trying to get my hands neutralized, or should I keep, because a tool like a hammer, I don't usually put 2 hands on a hammer. I'm going to put my one hand on the hammer.
A really big hammer.
Yeah, big, but with a golf club, I've got 2 hands on it. So
you got a sledgehammer. You got 2 hands on it.
Okay.
You have to. If you had a curb there and you were going to break up the curb,
okay,
the concrete curb, and you're trying to break it with a sledgehammer,
right?
You'd have 2 hands with the sledgehammer, right?
Right.
You would beat the snot out of that curb with that thing, wouldn't you?
I hope so.
You wouldn't worry about turning. You wouldn't worry about turning your shoulders to hit it, would you?
No, I wouldn't be thinking about the movements. That's for sure. I would look at the task and just go for the task.
Right, and you would have in your brain only the forward swing. You wouldn't have any notion about the backswing, would you?
No.
And that's where we get involved in golf in any kind of athletic performance. If your brain is in the way, now here's the other part about the brain and its thoughtfulness and its athletic ability. There are 2 different clock speed computers in the human brain. The normal thinking brain that we use to learn language and know your name and know what day of the week it is and what time it is and so on. That part of the brain, the intellectual part of the brain, sends messages through the brain at 5 meters per second. Now, in a cranial thing, that size, that's a pretty fast. You go 5 meters in 1 second inside that brain. That's pretty fast electrical stuff going on. Okay.
Right.
But the somatosensory system, which is the motor system that sends messages to the muscles to move the skeleton, that goes across both hemispheres, the top of both hemispheres of the brain. That part of the brain sends messages to the muscle system at 125 meters per second. And I had a doctor correct me on that because I had 118 or something. He said, no, we know now it's 125 meters per second. So think of 125 meters per second. These messages are going to the muscles. That's a computer that has a clock speed of 125 meters per second. So in 1 second, it can do an enormous amount in 1 second, can't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay? If you try to take that program that runs at 125 meters per second clock speed computer program and run it through a 5 meters per second thinking brain, it's not going to work, is it?
No.
It's me.
So that's why
Dave says that's him. That's funny.
you get what would happen. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the way that our two brains have always worked in athletics is our thinking brain has to be ahead in time of the activity. For instance, if you're going to pound a nail, you have no idea how the hammer is going back because your attention is on how you're going to bring it forward in 1 second. Right?
Right.
Your attention is ahead of time, isn't it?
Yes.
Ahead of you in time.
Yes.
It's ahead of you. And so you have no idea how the hammer goes back. In fact, when you play tennis, you really don't have any idea how the racket goes back when you hit the forehand topspin crossing shot, right?
No, and if you do, you probably are not going to be very athletic in that game when it comes right down to it. Yeah.
Exactly right. Now, since the golf ball sits still, that means there's time to think with that slow brain. It doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And so all the other sports we play growing up, the ball's moving, right?
Correct.
No time to think. You use that 125 meters per second clock speed computer. You see where you want to hit it, and you hit it there. You don't think about how you did it except the feeling at impact. And every one of those other impact sports where there's a stick and a ball, tennis, baseball, hockey, ping pong, anything, base the whole thing on the feel and the moment and the timing of impact, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We learn all the timing based on that moment of impact. The anticipated moment of impact is how we build ourselves into a better athlete in that game. We think about how the club goes back. What? And we think about where the hip's going to be and how many you make sure that right leg is bent slightly and you keep the weight on the inside of your right foot and make sure your shoulders are tilted slightly at this angle. So you're on a plane that you're going to make sure you come down on and make. So what happens is because the ball's sitting still, there's time to think. And it doesn't mean you should. Because every other sport, the anticipated moment of impact is what we learn from.
So, AJ, if I can stop you right there, can you hang with us through the break? We're going to take our break, and then we'll come back with more AJ Bonar. It's ajgolf.com.
I'm up already?
And, goes fast. I want to thank
we
want to thank McPhee's Grill of Templeton for sponsoring Golf Talk Radio with Mike and Billy. Check out McPhee'sGrill.com. Call them at 805-434-3204. We're going to be right back with more of AJ Bonar, ajgolf.com, right here on Golf Talk Radio with Mike and Billy. Stay with us.
Baker's